What are you actually paying for when you purchase a premium high-end motorcycle helmet? What are the differences in materials, the construction, and the safety? Is it worth more to pay more for a helmet, or are some of the name brand helmets simply overpriced? Well, this week on MCrider, let's talk about it. So I'm going to go over a list of differences that you'll find in an expensive helmet from a less expensive helmet. And I think probably the first two that we're going to mention are two of the most important when it comes to finding the proper value of a motorcycle helmet. When we talk about materials, first let's talk about the exterior materials that the motorcycle is made of, the outer shell. Expensive helmets typically use advanced composites like carbon fiber or fiberglass, or a blend of fibers that offers a high level of durability and shock absorption, but with less weight, so they can offer a lot of protection, but they can make the material thinner so it weighs a whole lot less. Budget helmets often, however, offer a polycarbonate or a thermoplastic or ABS shells. You may see it listed on any one of those three, which are heavier and might not disperse the impact or force as effectively as the more expensive shells will. So how hard the outer shell of a helmet is not the only factor that determines how good it is for a motorcycle helmet, but how well that shell disperses the force of an impact is equally, if not more important than the overall hardness of the shell. And there are materials that are better at doing that than a plastic or an ABS shell, which you'll find on the cheaper helmets. This may not seem like a huge difference, but the weight of the helmet makes a big difference as well in your comfort and your safety. Having a lighter helmet that performs better than simply a plastic shell costs money for the manufacturer, and that results in higher prices for the buyer. And that's one of the primary differences that you'll see in the less expensive helmet from the more premium helmets. Next, let's talk about the interior materials. The most important part in discussing the interior materials is the liner. So not the part that comes in contact with your head, but the part that is next to the shell of the helmet, so the foam part of the helmet. High-end helmets are going to usually use a multi-density EPS, or expanded polystyrene foam liners, that are better at managing impact energies across a broad range of crash scenarios. So it's got multi-layers on it. It's not just one single layer of foam. Budget helmets usually use that single density EPS foam, which is still effective, but it's not going to offer the same level of nuanced protection that a multi-layer is. So the big advantage of multi-density foam liners in high-end motorcycle helmets is that it significantly enhances rider safety by providing a tailored impact absorption across a wide range of crash scenarios. That was kind of a mouthful, but to say it simply, it's got softer foam mixed with medium foam mixed with harder foam in layers, so that it can account for all the different crash scenarios that a single layer of foam is not going to be able to account for. High-end helmets usually come with an optically correct or scratch-resistant visors that may include treatments like anti-fog or UV protection. They also usually come with some kind of a pen lock system, which also reduces the fogging, and is a very handy feature to have, is a pen lock in your helmet, so that you can put that shield on the inside, and it virtually makes it fog free. You don't find that as often in the real budget helmets. They also offer a quick release mechanism for easy changes. So if you're the type of person who likes to have a clear visor for darker rides and a tinted visor for full sun rides, expensive helmets are going to be a little bit easier to remove those shields and to swap them in and out. Budget helmets are going to have a simpler visor system that's going to lack some of the advanced coatings and features that you'll find on the higher end stuff. You know, I've had a few of the budget helmets on my head where there's actually some distortion in the visor, and that's a result of the visor being thinner or thicker in certain lines. So you'll see it in a line across the visor, and that's created because the visor itself is actually thinner or thicker through that line, and it causes an optical distortion, where the more expensive premium visors are going to be optically correct, and you're not going to have to deal with those distortions that you'll get in the cheaper visors. Another big difference is quality helmets offer more shell sizes. So a well-made helmet is going to have a different outer shell size depending on a small, medium, or large helmet. This allows the manufacturer to make the helmet that better fits the individual, and it reduces the weight significantly for the smaller sized helmets. Budget helmets are going to create a one-size outer shell, so the outer shell is the same no matter what size of helmet you've got, and then they're going to change the interior lining to fit the rider's different sizes. That allows them to produce the helmets at a much reduced cost at the expense of, the riders with a smaller size head having a really large helmet because the shell on that helmet is the same size as the shell on the large helmet. Ventilation and road noise is a balancing act for helmet manufacturers. They can create a quiet helmet with no ventilation, or they can create a highly ventilated helmet at the expense of more wind noise. The best helmets put a lot of research in wind tunnel testing and aerodynamics to find a good solution somewhere in the middle. Shoei and Arai helmets, the only two really premium brand of helmets that I've had much personal experience with or riding much with, do a great job of offering ventilation and a quiet ride in their helmets. So they find that balance by doing a lot of wind testing so that you get good airflow through there at not an expense too much of making the helmet particularly noisy. Ventilation and wind noise is one area where riders can tell a big difference between a well-made helmet and a budget helmet. And if all you've ever ridden is with budget helmets, you may not have much to compare it with, but there is a difference between budget helmets and well-made helmets, in my experience, due to the ventilation that's offered in them and the amount of wind noise that those helmets produce. A well-made helmet is going to have more robust testing for their helmet. So in addition to DOT, you'll find ECE, Sharp, and Snell ratings, or a combination of those different tests on better-made helmets. ECE, Sharp, and Snell ratings are a much higher standard, in my opinion, than the testing done for DOT, and in my opinion, DOT is not very reliable at all. In fact, I think the DOT standard is pretty useless because for the most part, it relies on the manufacturer to self-test their helmet to the standard that the DOT sets. So read over this statement from the NHTSA website and see if you can spot the problem for yourself. Maybe pay particular attention to what this section right here says. So as you can see, the DOT is relying on the manufacturer to be honest in the production of their product, and a lot of helmet manufacturers don't seem to be totally upfront when it comes to these standards or meeting these standards, especially when you get in the real budget sub-$100 priced helmets. So there are some important decisions between the quality of a helmet and a rock-bottom priced helmet or a budget helmet, but does that mean you have to spend $1,000 on a helmet that is safe? Well, I don't think so. Helmets, like many other things in life, offer a diminishing return on your investment. The numbers I'll use here are just for example, but to help make this point. But the differences in safety and quality between say a $100 helmet and a $1,000 helmet is huge. So you'll find a big difference between the very bottom priced helmet and some of the most expensive helmets. And one might think if you go cut that price in half and go at a $500 helmet, you're going to be somewhere in between. But in my experience, a $500 helmet is going to be a whole lot closer to the $1,000 helmet than it is the $100 helmet, because the more you spend, in my opinion, the less you're getting for your dollars investment as you go up the line in helmets. You can certainly spend more than the middle of the road helmet, but as you spend more, you might not get as much for your money. The key is to using some of the talking points from this video to understand the differences between a budget and a quality helmet so you understand what you're paying for. And then depending on your budget or how much you can afford for a helmet, you can make a more educated decision on the features that you're willing to pay for. You can usually find these in the spec list. And to be honest, on some of those budget helmets, you got to search kind of hard to find what the helmets are actually made of or the actual spec sheet for that helmet. So read those carefully if you're going with a less expensive helmet. But none of this matters if the helmet doesn't fit you properly. You can have the most expensive helmet on the market, but if it doesn't fit you properly, it's not going to matter. To see my guide on finding a proper fitting helmet, go to mcrider.com/fit, and I'll show you a video there that tells you everything you need to know about finding a helmet that fits you properly. Till next week, guys, it's Kevin with MC Rider, and I'll see you on the road. There's a whole lot more to MC Rider than just the weekly videos. Go to mcrider.com/member. Get access to all the resources that make MC Rider one of the best places on the web for people who love motorcycles and want to get better at riding them.